摄像头啊，这个摄像头很一般，可能就50块钱吧。
Good evening from the Health Education Campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic.
这个我只放他们俩的原因了哈，这个其他人的声音我就不放了，就是我只放 Donald Trump 和 Joe Biden 的声音了。啊，算了，还开
This
着。
debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments, with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open
就是
discussion
讲
for
一些
the
流
rest
程哈，
of
就
each
是一
segment.
些
Both
规范啊，
campaigns have agreed
时
to
间
these
啊，
rules.
这个 session 之类
For
的。
the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the two candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the
主持
commission
人吧，
for
就是
all
那
4
个
debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed
Charlie
that
Wallace
candidates will not shake
他是一
hands
个
at
反
the
正一
beginning
个
of
电视台
tonight's
的还是一个
debate.
新闻机构的主持人
The
啊，也是比较
audience
有名
here
的。
in the hall has promised to remain
对，他就是
silent.
那个
No
moderator，
cheers,
应该是。
no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on
哦，
what the
还
candidates
对，
have
我
to
其实
say.
看听这个 Wallace 这个
No
名字我
noise
就比
except
较那个，
right
对
now,
，Chris Wallace，
as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump,
我也想到
and
那
the
个
Democratic
最经典的那
nominee,
个 Wallace，
Vice President Biden.
对对对，应该是他的儿子，对。哎呀，总王出现了。哎，有一说一哈，Joe Biden 真长得挺帅的，有没有觉得？我觉得真长得挺帅的。如果你看他年轻照片的时候，年轻时候也很帅。
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President
他俩
Trump, you
出来我就感
nominated
觉
Amy
就，
Coney
我把这个
Barrett
当做
over
一
the
个综艺
weekend
在看，大家知道
to
吗？我是这
succeed
种
the
感觉
late
的。
Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the
我一
court.
看他俩出来，
You
我就
say the
觉得
Constitution is clear
很想
about
笑，
your
不知道为什
obligation
么。
and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong, and where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and
这是一个最基础的哈，就是说，总领啊，就是为什么你觉得你应该当选，而你对手不该当选哈？每个人2分钟。
in fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time. Even if we did it after the election itself, I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that we have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for
对，这第一个是这个 Supreme Court，我刚才说错了。
the American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is, and that say
不
occurs
过比较有意思啊，他
when
还
they
叫
vote
这
for
个
a
Joe
United
Biden
States
Vice
Senator
President。
and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is. because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election.
他应该放一个 timer 在这儿，这个2分钟，我现在都不知道他说到哪里了，就是大概的位置啊。
Then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say,
这主要是这个现在大法官一个很重要的一个问题就是，至少民主党啊，他们认为，如果选了这个新的这个女的这个大法官啊 Barrett， 就会影响这个我们说这个 Obamacare。那 Obamacare 如果被取消了啊，那么就有很多人，可能有上千万的人啊，甚至更多美国人就会失去他们最基本的医疗保障啊。他们目前来说就是很针锋相对这样的一个问题啊，就是整个的美国的医疗保健系统啊。
An opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years.
The
And the
election's
100
already
million people,
started.
Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger
当时 Trump 也
problem
太
that
逗
you
了，
have
故意
is that
整
you're going to
Biden， 他就意思这个 Joe Biden 说那些事实啊、数据有问题。
private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist.
We're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party
That is
wants to
simple.
go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
Right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act?
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And
this.
if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to
需要
ban
China 的
All right, gentlemen,
Europe, which was heavily
Mr. President,
infected. You would have been
Mr.
much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr.
Much
President,
later.
Mr.
You're
President.
talking about 2 million people.
You're not
Mr. President, as
shut
the
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but
对，他先打断了，有点跑题了。再一个，我觉得这个可以看到，整个来说，Donald Trump 目前来说是取一个攻势啊，而且他主要攻击的是 Joe Biden 的这些数据啊，说的这个数据不准或者是错误的，这个我觉得挺黑的，因为我感觉 Joe Biden 这种被问数字啊，本来就有点不清楚，你越问他越糊涂。
Yeah, it's not in the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a minute?
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So, on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan to...
这个问题就是说，这个 Donald Trump 在这个4年里啊，一直说要把 Obamacare 拿掉，但是从来没有提出来一个有效的这个系统啊，就是只有破没有立啊。
Absolutely a big thing. That was the worst part of Obamacare. Chris, that was the worst part of Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it. And we will protect people with pre-existing.
规则是允许的，只要你觉得对你有利，你就可以查。你如果当然了，你可能如果查得不好的话，可能会损失一些选民啊。
Come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just
还
tell
是
you
问，就是
something.
具体的，你这
There's
个
nothing symbolic.
Obamacare 不
I'm
行，这个
cutting
Trump
drug
care
prices. I'm
应该
going
是怎
with
么样？
favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the things.
Donald Trump 说，这个虽然这个我把这个医保的这个给它 cut 了一些啊，就很多人可能没有医保或者医保变得很差，但是我把药价降下来啊，我降90%药价，当然了，这个我严重怀疑他能不能做到啊。他说他能做到，他是
Drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny
If I
fraction.
say
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion,
No,
let
but
me
this
ask
is
you,
big-
you'll
this
be
is
happy,
big stuff.
sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
will, if I can
Sorry.
ask you the question, it will
Not what
end.
your party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled
Joe
in
Biden
the
开始了。
public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie
Number-
Sanders,
I-
who's
I
far
did.
left, on the manifesto,
With
we
you-
call it.
with
And that
manifesto.
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm
you
not going
didn't
to listen
agree?
to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not by
here
much.
standing facing you, buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2 days
I'll tell
early.
you.
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do is
Super
hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very
我发现一个
lucky.
细节啊，我怀疑可能是这
I got
个
very
Joe
lucky
Biden 的
tonight
团队
as
或者
well.
是给他指的。你发现没有？就 Joe Biden 在说的时候呢，一直是看主持人或者是看观众，而这个 Donald Trump 一直是在看拜登哈。这个拜登一直没有直视这个 Donald Trump，大家发现了吗？我估计这是一种策略哈，防止被这个 Donald Trump 带走或者带偏了。
Last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd
you
be
know,
surprised.
you pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy,
Go.
the wrong
Go.
night at
Go.
the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let
Now
him-
you're disavowing it.
There is no manifesto, number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
You
two.
just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
How,
That's
folks,
absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you
to.
have any
And under that
idea
plan,
what
you
this
have
clown's
socialized, they
doing?
call it
Mr.
you have any
President.
do?
socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I tell
President,
you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care. Because
Bernie?
because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two,
yeah.
there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't
2000万人。
look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give
Number
you better
3.
health care at a much lower price because
and by the way,
Obamacare
he doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Gentlemen, you realize
is no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's no
same
good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
And I
going
just...
这个 Obamacare 主要的问题确实是它就是强制的啊，像和你开车一样，必须上保险。这个的确有一些问题啊，给美国的财政以及一些特别底层的人的这个经济其实都是有一定负担的。但是这个问题啊，的确很复杂，不是那么简单的。这个
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care.
Of course we do.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has not.
拜登就说这个川普说的这个降低药价呀都没做到，而且没有提出任何一个具体的这个医改方案啊，就是都是空谈。
This man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right,
He's
I
against-
have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
your
to answer the
senators.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why would
because
you answer that
because
question?
the question
You want to put a lot
is
of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is
justices,
the
radical
question-
left.
Will you
Who is
shut
on-
up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
right.
Gentlemen,
This is-
I think
This
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to
unprecedented.
pack the court.
We have
I'm
ended,
not going to give a list.
we have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
Donald Trump 是有点这个太有攻击性了，我觉得应该稍微收一收。
The people understand, Joe.
They sure do.
47 years you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is a
Donald Trump
awfully
是嘴
serious
上绝对
subject.
不会吃亏的人啊，他
Let's
怎
try
么
to
也
be
要占
serious
点便
about
宜
it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even
现在美国就是700万人感染啊，这个20万人死亡，这是据统计的啊，没统计的就得更多可能。
anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
对，有一说一，我觉得 Joe Biden 今天晚上表现还可以，至少目前啊。
200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 5% or 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day
我
are
的天，他
dying.
底下有稿没
When
有？
he was
只
presented
要没有
that
稿，他
number,
能
he
记住这
said
些
it
数字的话，
is what
也
it
是可以
is.
的。
Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging.
这个攻击还是比较重要的，就是的确啊，这个应该是事实，就是被爆出来啊，也是最近的事情嘛。在2月份左右，就是 Donald Trump 其实已经知道这个事情，包括知道这个疫情很严重了哈。但当时就算是 也不是说什么没有做啊，但是的确在 downplay 这些东西啊，就是不想把它弄得很大。
How dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in
但他说这个
March
Donald Trump 什么都没有
exactly
做，
what
这
we
个显
should
然是
be
不对的。
doing.
Donald Trump 做了很
And I
多。
laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be
当然做得怎
providing
么
the
样，
money
其实
the
另
House has
说。
passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open, open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to
Wait, you
you.
have 2 minutes, sir.
就是比如我的意思应该就比如封锁啊，一些国家的这个旅行啊什么的，这应该都算。当然只是就是可能做的不够好吧，可以这么说。但是说什么都没有做，我觉得也有点违背事实。
Opted from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many
直
people
接
died
开
in
始
China.
向中国
You
开
don't know how
放。
many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at
他说这个俄罗斯呀、印度啊这些国家的数据其实都不是很客观啊，就或者说没统计好，所以说这个美国的这个百分比其实不能特别准确，因为觉得可能拜登有点夸大了美国的情况。
it was terrible, you wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really?
他说这个包括 Dr. Fauci 在内的还有很多这个民主党的这些地区的长官啊，比如说什么市长呀、州长之类的，都说这个 Donald Trump 做得很好。我严重怀疑他是说的是不是真的。
We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is.
Trump 说这个新闻媒体对他很坏啊，整天都黑他。
But
假
I'll
新
tell
闻
you,
什么
you
的。
could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do
done.
very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
这个也挺狠的。这Donald Trump 说了 H1N1 的时候，那是很多年前了。那时候 Joe Biden 是副总统啊，这美国做的也很一般，确实是那次死了很多人也是。
No, we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
哇，
more
这段说的
people.
太好了，我觉得这Joe Biden 这块说的很
And
好。
by the way,
Months later.
your own,
很有感情。
his own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way,
他这个刚才用了一段这个类似诗的这种排比啊，我觉得非常好。就是有多少人这个你一早上醒来发现这个家里本该有的一个座位是空的啊，因为就 COVID-19 夺走了你很重要的人的生命啊。这段我觉得说的太好了，而且他就主要攻击这个简单就是一个口罩的事情啊，因为一开始一直说不需要戴口罩，他就说这个你一直说不用戴口罩，但其实就一个口罩能挽救很多很多人的生命啊。现在如果回头看的话，的确是这个样子。
Odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your 2 words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them
you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what I
that
call
the head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slawi?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He said it's a
Redfield.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking about
after
when it's
that.
generally available. not when
Well,
it will
we're
be.
going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up logistically. They're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This
delivering.
is the same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically,
That was
and you
him.
know that.
I
That was said
And
sarcastically.
so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you
Everybody
can't, or
knows.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying
no,
you can't trust the scientists.
No.
我觉得刚才这个拜登说的那块儿说的都挺好的，挺中肯的啊，包括这疫苗啊什么的，就是他强调的就是说疫苗只是可能出来啊，包括这个出来以后还有这个分发的问题，我觉得说的都比较中肯的啊。这个当时 Trump 的确有点就是说的太乐观，或者是说的有点太想当然了啊。
That's not. They're the people. And by
I
the way,
spoke to the scientists that are in
by
charge.
the way,
They will have the vaccine very soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market. One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died. And a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So-
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years, you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just
刚才这个Joe Biden 提到 smart 这个词了，直接 Trump 直接就拿来说，意思就是说在那个 Delaware 的时候，Joe Biden 连他的这个同事的名字都忘了啊，直接就开始讽刺你别在我面前提这个 smart 这个词，我的天，Trump 真的是太狠了，他的语言真是够犀利的。
As to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going
我
to
觉得
affect
川普这个人挺有意
how
思
the
的，
virus is handled
就像
going
看那
forward
个
by
Apprentice 的时候一样，
whichever
这
of
这
you
个
ends
人
up becoming the next
很有
president.
意思。
I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about
说真的，这
reopening the
的确这也
economy
就是美
and
国，
schools.
在中国
Vice
，Donald Trump 这种人肯定选不上啊。虽然中国没有选举吧，但是如果有的话，Donald Trump 肯定选
You've
不
got
上
to。provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to
tell
provide
that to
them
Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy
No,
Pelosi. And Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them.
Donald Trump 的
Republicans won't meet.
刚才那小声嘟囔，意思这个Joe Biden 你要想不起来，我帮你提醒一下那个 Schumer。
Probably
think
more
about
than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact
Well, he wants to shut down this country. And I want to keep it open. And we
You
did a
did-
great
he just
thing by
admitted
shutting
he
it
shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute, Joe.
Let him
Let me
finish
shut
first.
you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd. Because it's a political thing. But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning the efficacy of
you have to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I wear masks when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, if everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
No
serious.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
I want to ask you,
we got a little bit more than a
minute left in this
masks
segment.
Masks are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies.
我觉得他说这个 Fauci 说的一些话，Fauci 真的说过吗？我严重怀疑啊。
Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with
nobody will show up.
People with
It's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
but are you not
done a
worried
great
about
job as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you not worried about
we
the
have
disease
a lot of
issues,
people.
Sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask.
对，我知道这个 Dr. Fauci 说过，但是他 Donald Trump 刚才说的是这个 masks no good， 这个我就觉得有点奇怪了啊。这个意思就是说，我不知道这个 Fauci 会真的说这样的话吗？因为我对 Fauci 了解恐怕不会啊 ，Fauci 说话很严谨的。
Just quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
Ben, he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown in the second quarter. The unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard.
直接用了 China plague， 大家知道这个 plague 这个词，瘟疫啊，这个比这个 virus 还狠，我的天哪 ！Donald Trump 想干什么呀？
People is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to
他说这
close
个
down.
超过
He
上
will
千
shut
人
it
啊，
down
重新恢复
again.
就
He
业
will
在疫
destroy
情期
this
间。
country. You know, a lot of
已经
people
恢复得很
between
好。
drugs and alcohol and depression. When you
我
start
的天，
shutting
这个
it down,
plague
you
这
take
个
a look
词，
at
我
what's
觉得
happening in
我
some
个
of
人
the
还是比较敏感的啊。
Democrat-run states
我
where
不
they
知
have
道
these
这个其他的美
tough
国人怎么想。
shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed.
其实啊，我觉得这就是华人这个群体啊，在美国的这个政治中啊，太弱了。如果稍微强一点啊，Donald Trump 不敢这么说。
States up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right, your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. 到底是 V-shape 还是什么这个什么什么这个经济恢复又开始出来了
like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Another billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America.
我的天啊！我觉得这个Joe Biden 今天晚上发挥非常非常好，而且他这个内容的选取策略啊，我觉得非常非常好。
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes of.
他说的这个就是说，可能很多人在疫情期间哈，都是这些 billionaires 这些大富豪赚的钱啊。但是作为一些普通的家庭啊，他特别举了非常非常生动的例子啊，比如在哪一个小城市，你的这些具体家庭哈，可能你是在 suffer 实际上。
First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up.
挺远的，我记得10月10几号吧，好像是。
Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at.
Donald Trump 这个不是这个 Joe Biden 这个核心啊，就是说有点攘外必先安内的意思啊，就是说不是说不恢复经济，而是恢复经济之前必须要把 COVID 这个搞好啊，他是这个意思。
And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right, your time is up, sir. We are going to get to.
I have to respond to.
这个是真的，他说这个学校啊什么很多这个开的过早了，的确很多。我记得最早就是印第安纳的一个学校啊，这个开第一天直接就是很多学生都 COVID-19 了，直接又关了，所以这个东西的确是有很大的问题啊。但是现在像美国大学基本上都开了啊，而且都是允许适度的这种 physical 的这些 attendance 啊，而不是说简单的就是说网课，不是100%的网课。
Back Big Ten football, it was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
All right,
the people of
let's,
Ohio are very proud of me. And you know
we're
how
going to
I
get
found
back.
out? When he took
Gentlemen,
the
we're
phony
going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid
对，而且他更多的和基层选民对话，我觉得这个策略抓得比较好。
I know that you，
而且这个策略我觉得也比较适合拜登，就这种深情款款的哈，这种说到一些让你这个很柔软的、触动你心里很柔软的地方的话。
Each of those 2 years,
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income
说到这个税务问题
And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers. I paid
这个本来不在这个agenda 里
$38 million
本来不谈这个问题。
one year. I paid $27 million
Show us your tax
one year.
returns.
I went You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections.
Joe Biden 说，你
There's
把这个缴税证明
118-page
拿
or
出来
so。report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and I built a great.
我说实话，我感觉今天这个 moderator 比较偏向 Joe Biden。说真的，这个有一点倾向性啊，我感觉。本来比如说这个个人税务问题本来是不在这个里面的，按理说不应该谈的，而且这个东西属于美国的人的这个个人隐私啊，而且这个怎么说呢？这个目前来看，反正我觉得这个在这里面问他这个问题是很不合适的。
And you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We built the building, we get tax credits like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration. If you can believe that. Now, there may have been right after that happened, but
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes.
你这个 Joe Biden 他说，你看他这个说这个他这个交的税哈，比一个学校老师的税啊，这个可能一个中学老师或者小学老师的这个税交的还少。他不用数字啊，他用这种非常形象化的语言啊，我觉得这些都是技巧啊，或者说策略，很好的东西。
Need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you are president screwing things up.
You were a senator, and
You're
by
the
the way,
worst president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to
但感觉今天晚上
ask
这
you
个 Donald Trump
about
没
your
用很
plans
多
going
，Donald Trump
forward.
主要
Because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your.
就是提到这个 Joe Biden 他的这个施政方案啊，就关于税务，他要给这个年收入40万美元以上的人这个加税啊，而且加的可能挺多的。
Your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes, American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my tax, my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty
Half
of
of the
companies that are
companies,
already here, they'll leave for
hardly
other
any
places.
companies have
They will
poured in
leave,
here.
and you will have a
Have it.
depression, the
That-
likes
that-
of which you've never seen.
Look,
Mr.
we
Vice President.
inherited.
简单来说，Donald Trump 的意思就是说，你重税哈，虽然你表面上你觉得你能拿到更多的税款哈，但事实上会把一些有钱的人以及一些大企业逼走啊，就像这个美国的这个中产阶级的流失一样啊，比如流到中国啊，流到印度去啊，这是他的观点。
It was the weakest
Well, sir,
recovery
is it
since
fair to wait? Is it fair to
1921.
is it fair to say he blew it when
对，就和这个
in fact,
金
there
丝
was
说的
record-
差不
when
多
there
啊，
was
就是 Donald
record
Trump 说的就是
low
这个意思。
unemployment
Yeah.
before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse
number
me,
one.
Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would
This
take
guy.
a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We
Part
did
of
not
my
agree
standard
that.
fare.
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave
the
up on
automobile
manufacturing.
industry.
All right, let him
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had
这
the
块
best
事情我不太知道。
year.
他说他这个曾经把这个 Chrysler 这个还有这个 GM 哈这个拿到俄亥俄了，然后结果因为川普的原因哈把他们又逼走了。我不知道这块剧情到底是怎么样的，但说有这么一个事情。
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch,
All
down
right, gentlemen,
18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out.
我的天，
He takes out billions of dollars.
真刺激啊，
Takes
今
out
天。
billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And
看到这
also,
个 Joe Biden 的儿子 Hunter 在中国有这个管理了数十亿美元的基金啊。
gave your son $3.5 million.
我的
What
天
did
哪，
he
我
do
以
to
为这些
deserve
问题
it?
都不会
What
谈
did
到。
he do with Burisma
None
to
of
deserve
that.
You've asked the question, let him answer.
Joe Biden 说那些完全是假的，但是我觉得这个有一定的真实
Mr.
成分啊。
President,
It's
Mr.
totally-
President,
这个事情
please.
Totally
Ask the
可能没那么多
discredited.
钱啊。
Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get
No, no.
$3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
He got
Mr.
$3.5 million.
President,
it is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr.
Oh,
President,
but Mr.
it's an open discussion, please.
No,
It's a fact.
Well,
There's-
you
it's
have
not.
raised an issue, let the
It's been
Vice President
totally
answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report-
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he
and
did.
Mr.
the only guy that
President, let him
did
answer.
我也觉得啊，Joe Biden 不应该回应这个问题，就当没听见就行了。这个问题对他非常非常不利啊。
And you're
The
correct.
media.
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies, by
talk
the
about it
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even
Mr.
the people
President,
who
please stop.
testified under oath.
So let me
Under
ask you
oath.
this,
Under-
Joe.
under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even
you.
People under.
He got $3.5 million from
testified.
Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration. Said, "I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I did
really?
it
I'd like to know
honorably."
who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list
I'll
of the
fire
people
them.
who testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't
Well,
do a good
here's
job. With you,
Go
they
ahead,
say
you get
they're
the,
gonna
wait
do
a
it.
minute, you get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just say, Joe.
No, I'm Mr. President. I'm
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did he
not true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal.
还有说这个莫斯科的事情哈，这个350万美元啊。
I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
No, let him-
my family
already
lost
wrote-
a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's such
And they're right
a.
here.
Mr.
That's such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost
This
a
is
fortune.
not.
Donald Trump 意思是我的这个家人，因为我当总统反而是这个损失了很多哈，你这个 Hunter 这个确实赚了很多。
Talk about what you need, you, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you should-
All right,
Not about here.
that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
He did
，Joe Biden 说这个
Vice President,
和我的家庭没关系啊，我们
It's a
讨论
very
是
important
选民的
No,
问题。
I
我觉得
He
这个
stood
是
up.
No,
He stood up.
the answer to
and
the
he
question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion of
That is
You know what? You're
absolutely not
stop.
true.
Tape doing it.
You're going to
Not
have
tape.
True.
Gentlemen,
Is-
I hate to raise my voice, but
He's
it
on
seems to
tape.
be, why shouldn't I be different than the two of you? So here's the
Very
deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think
谈种族问题了，这个问题我觉得是非常非常重要。美国这个种族问题非常非常问题大。我稍微这个简单说一下，因为有些可能这个华人可能觉得哈，这个叫对于黑人的一些歧视，或者说打黑人其实是有道理的。其实这个东西的确，我觉得这个歧视绝对存在哈。有一个特别有名的视频啊，就是在 YouTube 上，大家可以搜一搜，就是你就搜什么 GTA 啊，什么 Chase 就可以啊。有一个人就是在现实世界里啊玩了那种类似 GTA 的，就是抢了车跑，就跑成那个样。这警察用直升飞机啊什么追他，追了好久啊，一枪没有打他，最后就是把他铐起来，按到地上铐起来了。这要是个黑人，早开枪打死了。我跟你说，这个真的是多少是存在这种现象的。
Abraham Lincoln, my question for the 2 of you is why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity.
那个 GTA 的那个视频，这个上千万的播放量在 YouTube 上。
Constitution, and we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
这个我还真不知道。他说3倍党最近又杀了一个人，我不太清楚。
Is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do?
这个事情也是我印象比较深刻。我当时就在 Minnesota， 我当天晚上就去了那个事发现场去看了一下。但是我当时真的没有想到这个事情后来会变得这么大。
That it was the disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a savior of African Americans.
对，我当时真的没有想到这个事情会变得这么的 political。我当时觉得这是一个社会问题。这就是为什么我当时本来是想去做一些前线报道的嘛，大家应该知道啊。我当时做，后来我没有这么做，就是我就没想到这个事情完全超出了我的想象后面。
Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism.
You did a crime bill, 1994. Where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even
对，
say
我
it.
应该把这个字幕变成
I
错
want
的，
to
我傻
return to the
了。
question of race.
他反正是哎，
Vice President
不能
Biden,
设
after
置
the grand jury in
不
the
能设置中文
Breonna Taylor case, decided not to charge
那就
any of the
算了。
police with homicide. You said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice.
他就是问题，就是你认为这个黑人的确在美国到底或者非裔美国人啊，在美国到底有没有被不公平对待哈？这个 Ronnie 坚决认为有啊，坚决认为有。
Are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call to get.
是这个东西就是一个当政者和在野的这个一个区别啊。这个 Donald Trump 也强调了，他有几乎所有的这个警察队伍呀、法院队伍的这个支持啊，而 Joe Biden 根本都不敢提，因为一提啊，就是或者说你稍微表扬一下这个 law enforcement 这些，或者甚至提啊，这个 Joe Biden 的支持者就会变得很生气啊。
Breonna Taylor, most don't like it, but we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never
他要和这个暴力完全割裂啊，就是和
When
暴
they
力一定要
run
这
through the
个
middle of
切
a
割开。
town
President Trump-
and burn down your
President
stores
Trump,
and kill people all
President
over the
Trump,
place,
that
and you
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful
protest.
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not, but
asking-
you say it is.
President
I did not
Trump,
say
I'd like to continue with the
Yes,
issue
go
of
ahead,
race. I
please.
promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order
Please.
in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane.
Donald Trump 意思就是之前有，但是他给解决了，绝对不是。这个我之前也提到过，大家就看一看美国的这个参议院的议员啊，建国这么多年，200年以来，可能也就10个啊非裔美国人当过，就这还拿出来大谈特谈，谈这个种族多样性啊、平等。真正平等不应该按人口比例吗？黑人虽然还算是 minority 啊，这个和白人比，但是200多年也就10个人左右当过 senator， 你敢相信吗？
We're teaching people to hate our country, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's
Oh,
the
you-
racist.
you just-
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't
than
need
he
to.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people
他
who
意思他
don't
自
have
己也曾
money.
经
They
被
look
歧
down
视
on
过啊，
people
作为这
who
个
are of a
Irish
different
Catholics
faith.
啊，我
They
还真
look
不知
down
道
on
Joe
people
Biden 是
who are a
Irish。
different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism
Vice
in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but the
Lord.
reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order. And you still haven't mentioned. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go ahead, say it.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order. Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're now, Mr. President, you're going to, Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not. I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though, and in the
他们说就是在这个 suburbs 啊 ，suburbs 中文可能有句话翻译成郊区的，其实不是很准确，但是就是 suburbs 这些地方啊，现在来说受到非常大的这个影响哈，无论是这个 COVID 还是现在这些暴力啊，他们就谈到这个问题。这个基本上大家应该都比较了解了，就是老生常谈的哈，就是Donald Trump 认为是这个 Democrats 啊，民主党人就是为了把这个美国搞乱，然后为了大选啊，就是现在就各种搞暴乱也好，或者搞这些有组织犯罪啊，也不是有组织啊，就是煽动一些犯罪啊现象。那这个 Joe Biden 肯定说不是啊，就是说要这个割裂开啊，就简单这样的情况。
To defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before. The officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down.
不过说真的，我觉得这个Joe Biden这个语调对我来说还行。
That's not with us. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support. He has no law enforcement support.
That's not true.
Almost nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead. Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
All right. Name one.
Trump 说这个没有一个这个警察或者暴力执法部门支持拜登的啊，有的话你说一个，是吧？我们有的是时间，结果这个给拜登直接噎住了。
that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the national...
这个是一个很具体的实际问题啊，就是Joe Biden 作为一个民主党的代表，现在来说，他有没有对这些具体的民主党的这些具体的一些地方长官说过，你需要做出一些行动来去阻止这些暴力，或者是那个，就是有没有？这是个非常的事实的简单的问题啊。
be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never called
prosecuted.
for the people,
He's never
the
said
leader.
that.
Excuse me, sir.
我估计他应该是
You've
没
never
有
called
很
for
难
the
回答
leaders
对
in
拜登来说这个问
Portland
题。
and in Oregon to
Because
bring
they-
in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here,
Oh, really?
here's the
But
thing.
no,
I
that's-
sent
no,
in
wait, I asked
a
a question.
to get the killer of the
Vince-
young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3
Vince,
days,
President Trump,
Portland
President
wouldn't do
Trump,
anything. I
it's
had to send in the
interrupted.
U.S. Marshals, and
President
they
Trump,
took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, you know, his own former spokesperson said, you know, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all
I
about.
don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the
All right.
Well, here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that that's what he is keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly,
And-
every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
就拜登基本上没回答，
criticized-
不过我估计就是他没有
You
说
have
过这个话。
repeatedly,
Wait,
you have
just one
repeated, no,
second.
you've been talking
You
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
没有正面
I'm
回答。
asking you,
I would love to
you know,
end it.
sir,
I would love to end it, and
you know,
we
if you
would
want to
very-
switch seats,
We would very quickly.
We could do that, but I'm
send
no,
in
I'm,
the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they
Good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number?
就对于一些白人优先主义者哈，以及一些这个地方的民兵，因为地方民兵基本上就是，其实不是白人优先主义啊，但是他们可大部分是白人啊，说你们需要停手啊，这因为两方嘛，现在来说这个暴乱啊，一方面就是说示威的啊，或者是你说这些暴乱者啊，另一方面就是制暴的啊，但是其实现在来说，美国的这个问题就是以暴制暴啊，这个两边都是暴。
Stand by, but I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a
FBI director
This
said,
is a left-wing
Go ahead,
problem.
white supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his
It's an idea.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna,
you know what? He's
no, we're
wrong.
done.
Joe Biden 说那个 Antifa 意思是说只是一个理念啊，并不是一个真正存在的组织，意思就是这个 Donald Trump 在这儿阴谋论或者是编故事啊。
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are-
Antifa
是是是，
is
这
a
个这个
dangerous
是真的，这
Gentlemen,
个
we're
是
now
康美的
moving on to
事。
the Trump
And
and
you
Biden
be careful.
record.
而且 Joe Biden 居然把他的名字给记住了哈，真的是给拜登点个赞。
Seeks a second term. It is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. He was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great.
这个 Donald Trump 进入这个吹的模式啊，意思就是 自己的这个执政期间，无论是疫情前还是疫情后啊，都是史无前例的最棒啊，包括建立了太空军呀，以及一些军事上的改革啊，等等等等的各方面的。
When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president, but I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
就谈到通俄门的事件了啊，他说这个川普是普京的这个小弟。
Agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical
打断了，不应该打断的话啊。然后Joe Biden说，这个川普从来没有履行过自己的话啊。
We're poor. The billionaires have got much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes. And I resent.
Are you talking about Hunter? Are you talking about Hunter?
I'm talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Beau. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He wasn't dishonorably.
Cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you became vice president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
that is simply
and various
not
other places.
True.
说真的，这个那Joe Biden 那个另一个孩子的确还是可以的，就是这个 Hunter 不大行。
People like a lot of people we know at home had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was
he
given tens of millions of dollars?
But he wasn't given tens of millions of dollars. That is totally discredited.
We've already been
totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a judgment call here.
$3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about true.
Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report, it was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned.
下一个议题是这个环境气候变化啊，这个好像之前不在这个 agenda 里啊，我不知道。我刚才想说什么来着？对，这个 Joe Biden 刚才还大方的承认了Hunter 有这个 drug problem， 然后但是正在这个改好哈，这个我觉得，从美国整个的这个社会来说，我觉得这个对他是一个加分项就是勇于承认，美国是愿意给这种人机会的啊。
And what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've
believe?
got to have cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change?
哇，这个 Donald Trump，我作为一个我对这些方面还了解一点啊，就是 Donald Trump 这个说的是完全的错误的啊。他说这个加州的这个山火，现在这个森林山火是由于这个森林管理不当，我可以告诉大家，绝对不是哈。有非常强的科学证据表明啊，这个加州的这个山火越来越频繁啊，包括这个 Australia 的这个 bushfires 以及中国的洪水哈，是与这个全球变暖或者全球的气候变化的影响关联是非常非常大的啊。特别就是我们说的这个 El Niño 啊，就是这个厄尔尼诺现象啊。这个现在来说，整个海水的温度升高呢，厄尔尼诺会变得越来越频繁，而且变得越来越极端。这个就会导致这个加州越来越干旱啊，就是容易会，而且这个温度你如果会高的话，也会这个一边又干，然后又热的话，就很容易引起森林大火啊。这个 Donald Trump 说的这个是完全的这个不符合 science 啊。不是说这个你这个有人这个简单的说，就因为有一个烟头搁在这个森林里点燃了，不是这样的，绝对不是这样的。
But I said, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
但是啊，这个的确也不是说美国一个人能解决的，这是一个全球的问题啊。你就是美国减排的话是控制不了厄尔尼诺的啊。
Which limited carbon emissions in power plants. Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars and trucks?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply ignored.
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out.
就是说新能源汽车的事情啊，这个 Donald Trump 看样还是想至少保留燃油汽车的发展的空间的啊。他就说这样的话，不然的话太贵了啊。这个特斯拉确实不是说谁都能买得起的。
I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to
但是他说他也支持这个新能源汽车啊，也给了很多政策优惠，只是说不能完全的把这个燃油车都给砍掉。
$2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two.
这个问题就是说，这个 Donald Trump 说，这个如果完全用绿色能源啊，会严重影响美国的经济啊。然后现在问题Joe Biden 就开始回答了。
To cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because
他说他要重回这个巴黎气候协定啊，这个是大事情。
And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion. Say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that
我没有点错吧？他说他是要给巴西200亿美元，然后或者援助怎么样的，去阻止这个热带雨林的这个被砍伐。
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, make sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact that it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion.
Look,
that's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we were going to.
All right, let me.
他刚才说的看不是给巴西啊，应该是给美国人，就是或者说相当于一个改革或者转型的成本啊。Donald Trump 说这个远远不是200亿美元啊，是1万亿还是更多啊？就是意思就是成本太高了，美国负担不起啊。但我觉得这个长期来看的确是要转型，而且我觉得毕竟这个新能源大家可以看到，新能源总体来说无论是什么风电包括新能源汽车等等，总体来说都是高精尖的技术啊。我觉得像这个Joe Biden说的。比较合理啊，虽然也不能说100%对吧，就是这个发展起来会创造出更多的有附加值的这个工作机会，也就是不是像这个特别简单的工作，反而是这个能创造出更多的价值来，而且这个我觉得的确早晚要转型的，说真的。
With the deal with, by the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
He did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard.
Trump 的意思就是说，这个现在所有美国人的家庭，你知道吗？这种一般来说，这个造房子的时候都没有考虑到环保因素这个你比如说用太阳能供电呀，以及这个房子的这种保暖结构就是都没有做到很能源的优化他的意思就是把这些都算上你相当于所有人的房子都要拆了重建这就要这么多钱。
In Iowa, they didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
转型是很
不容易。Chris, so why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does, India does, they all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is
not
not
my
plan.
100万亿还不是1万亿。
Every
It's not my
building.
plan.
I want to rebuild every new.
100万亿，我的天！
He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did is he said
this segment.
he called the
Mr.
military
Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape. He said
Mr.
stupid bastards.
Please,
He
sir,
said it.
stop.
I would never
I
say
would
that.
Play
to the
Stop.
military.
Play it.
Go ahead.
打爱国牌
The Vice President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just
plan.
lost the radical left.
I
huh?
support
这有点问题
the Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment.
我懂了。
Election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are
就
receiving
应该也是一个折中的
mail-in
方案啊，
ballots
这个
or
拜登的
going
这
to
个计
vote
划，不
early.
是说完全
How
的这个把
confident
传统能源
should we be
连根拔
that
起。
this will be a fair election? And what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks? Because it'll not only be to election day, but also
现在
counting
是
some
选举正义
ballots,
的程序正义
mail-in
的问
ballots
题。
after election day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election in this
是
final
这个
segment?
太激烈
Mr.
了，
Vice
都给
President,
说
you
懵
go
了。
first.
Prepared to let people vote, they should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote.
至少这个民主党认为邮寄选举对他有利，他就说这个特别是由于这个 COVID 的很多人，这个你如果不能邮寄选举的话，他非常非常不方便啊。而且他说这 Donald Trump 曾经也用的这个邮寄选举啊，所以说没有问题。你现在来说纯粹就是找事情啊。
And they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand. You have it in your control to determine
从某种意义上讲，Joe Biden 还是比较自信的啊，或者想展示出来比较自信。他认为只要更多的人去投票，他能赢。
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by
2 minutes
Democrats.
is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President
a
Trump,
it's a rigged election.
You're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud.
对，这个 Donald Trump 好像是最近对这个 像 New York、New Jersey 这几个地方啊，非常有信心。他说这个出来之后，这个差距将会是差几十啊，而不是说就差1%-2%。意思就是说这一点，这个邮寄选票其实不关键啊。当然他也说了这个有一些这个类似于这个造假的问题啊，比如说有重复投票呀等等的啊。
To settle any dispute.
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them.
But
They throw them out left.
If there are millions of ballots going out
what
right
you
now?
do
What
is
are
you
you
go and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
and
that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people
You go and vote. You go and vote.
But
Like
what I'm
they
saying is, what are you
like they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people.
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
5 states.
他说还有一些这个选票居然被这个就是交易啊，或者是这怎么着的，这个直接就被扔到河里了，这我不知道什么回事。但是交易这个事情还是挺吓人的，但是应该啊量不会大，就算有的话。
Saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this. Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett
他应该就说投票的里面这个
I'm
差个
concerned that
30-40%。
any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots, Senate and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already there's been fraud.
Mail service delivers
Gentlemen, the final question is, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited.
不是，他是说这个，他是说他能赢拜登30-40%，应该是这个意思。
Ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until election day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So
first
for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest?
对，说真的，这让人
tonight.
这个让人突然，你知道吗？就会让人感觉，难道美国这么多年的这个选举都有很多问题吗？这个很吓人啊。
My supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They're called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense, I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago. and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President Biden.
他意思，他说这些投川普的这些选票都被人扔了。
Calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
I asked you had an opportunity to respond.
Look at Carolyn Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're
and
going to leave it there.
Too.
To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University.
结束了啊，简单总结一下吧。首先说一下观感啊，给我最大的一个惊喜就是 Joe Biden， 说实话，今天晚上表现不错啊。无论是他的表现，还有这个整个的策略啊，虽然这个他也有一些这个小的瑕疵啊，有一些的确又是问的有点被问懵了，或者有些东西想不起来了。然后呢，我对这个主持人哈，我感觉我觉得有一点点哈，他确实有一点点这个偏向于Biden啊，这个。你比如说这个，就是我说了嘛，他这个问到川普的这个个人问题，这个税务的问题，按理说这个是个人隐私哈，无论他是总统还是一个普通的美国人，他这个问这个，我觉得挺奇怪的，而且这个不在这个预设的这个问题里啊，这个总之来说这个样，但是我觉得某种意义上讲哈，今天晚上我觉得，如果能打分的话，我觉得两者其实比较接近哈，比较接近，能打的话我可能给。就是如果是10分哈，我平均分的话，我给拜登5.5啊，给 Trump 4.5吧，差不多。我觉得他们俩也就差个1分吧。但是我觉得 Joe Biden，总体来讲会给人的印象相对而言更好一些啊。特别是在 Trump 说他有几个关于 science 的这个特别这个硬伤啊，我觉得是有的。虽然啊，很多人可能也不太懂啊，但是在我看来这方面还是比较那个的哈，而且。大家应该也知道，在大学里哈，或者是有大学文凭以上的这个，对 Trump 来说，普遍来说是比较反对的啊。你知道大家曾经都出现过什么事情吗？就是我当时和人聊，也算是大家一起在这个聊政治哈，当然是很闲聊的啊，就是 Happy Hour 的时候说的啊。结果我说我 follow 了这个 Trump 的 Twitter 哈，直接就因为这个事情哈，有人就是。也不是说批评我吧，就是说你怎么能这个 follow Trump 的 Twitter 呢？意思就是这个 Trump 就简直就是不是人啊，或者怎么样的。大家知道这个在美国大学里啊，或者是就是这方面是非常非常的左或者蓝的啊，对 Trump 来说就是这个样子。那这个 Joe Biden 呢，我觉得他今天主要是我觉得就是一个 Hunter 的问题啊，一个 Hunter 的问题，这个被问的。我觉得他一开始的处理不太好啊，后面我觉得还不错。你比如说拿出他另一个儿子来说，这个，比如说这个在伊拉克战争中哈为国家贡献啊，这个美国一直是很讲究这个爱国主义的。虽然这个大家可能觉得这个中国整天讲爱国主义，其实美国这方面也特别特别重要。在美国这个主要的一个途径就是参军啊，特别是在海外执勤啊，这个是美国人是非常非常重视的这一点。不过哈，但是说真的啊，其实这个问题我一直想说，就是我觉得 Joe Biden 呢，从这个儿子能看出来哈，其实 Joe Biden 肯定他多少有点问题。我觉得就很多问题都是大家忽视的啊，比如说哈，我举一个例子，就是有一些运动员可能 之前表现特别好，结果突然怎么样，就是变得很差了啊！大家就觉得好像，哎，怎么回事？他这个突然这个水平就不行了。我觉得虽然我也不知道100%啊，我觉得大部分而且就是有一些我们不知道的事情，比如说可能，他比如说有 drug problem 哈，这个 drug issues， 或者是他这个感情上有问题，或者是怎么着，他这个训练不够努力，就绝对不可能他是一直保持一个高强度，就像这个 Kobe Bryant， 像这种很认真的训练哈，一直是这样，但是他突然断崖，应该是不太可能。那我想说的是什么意思呢？就是 Joe Biden 能养出 Hunter 的这种儿子，他有很大的责任的啊！我觉得绝对不会是这个 Hunter 自己就变坏了，可能Joe Biden 背后和他面前不是一样的人，大家知道吗？我觉得这个就是养孩子呢，很能看出一个父母的这个真正是什么样的人，因为很多时候我们看到的都是一个人一个成年人，他是有面具的他是有角色的，在这个社会中很多时候他会伪装自己，但是他在孩子面前可能就会表现出一些更真实的一面这就是我对Joe Biden的一些疑虑。但是总体来说呢，我觉得今天晚上就像我刚才说的嘛，Joe Biden 在我心中多少赢了一点，或者是我认为在整个美国人心中因为我们具体还是要分析这个整个的美国人的情况不能光看我个人的好恶我觉得Joe Biden应该会多少能赢那么一点点但是我们其实比较关注的我开这个频道也是我开这个直播也是更多的想讲一些这个股市和经济但是大家可以看到讲的不多他们这个提到的很少，更多的还是在一些社会性问题像这个种族像这个政治问题上所以说也这方面有些失望希望下一次能够更多的提到这些问题因为我们归根结底还是要这个 focus 到这个投资或者股市上，我觉得这个也是我们做这个频道的一个核心点吧。这个我希望后面能够更多的去讲一下。今天来说，主要就是谈到了一个经济问题这个的确是与我们这个就是我说的这个经济意思，就是说像这个 climate 对吧？的确就如我们所想的这个。Trump 还是这个支持这个 gasoline 以及燃油的一些传统产业，而这个 Joe Biden 是更支持一些这个新的我们叫这个 green energy green power， 这个基本上是与我们的预想是一样的包括那个什么这个 Donald Trump 说这个他会与这些这个 big pharmacy 像这个 Pfizer 这个 Moderna 他都说了与这些有些合作包括 J&J 按理说这个 Donald Trump 可能会给这些公司非常非常多的一些政策性的优惠甚至是一些特别快的就是我们叫给他一些快车道这个让他更快的通过审批。我觉得这个事儿 Donald Trump 能做出来。我的意思是什么呢？就这些东西可能是有违一些程序正义的就是可能会上的一些快一点，就有点类似于虽然不能和那个俄罗斯比但是有点像俄罗斯的这种这个疫苗上的太快我觉得 Donald Trump 能干出这样的事情来。所以说可能对这些公司来说，某种意义上讲我们不说这个真实的这个经济基本面但是可能从股市来讲，对他们会有一些利好消息如果Donald Trump能够当选的话，像这个 Pfizer， 像这个 Moderna， 虽然 Moderna 现在来说好像越来越不处于有利地位了包括J&J 简单说就这样吧，反正今天也不早了，我也准备休息了基本主要是其实就是没有特别谈到一些经济股市，我觉得希望能够听到，下次能听到更多吧。就是这个样子我也有点被这个Joe Biden传染了，我感觉我现在有时候脑子也有点这个突然就空了那大家就晚安，我们也都注意健康这个注意运动，注意休息千万别这个变得这个老年痴呆了行，那让我们明天再见，拜拜，各位晚安。